The vast crystal throne room of the Vesperan Hive Palace fell silent as Ambassador Alaric Fine stared up at the imposing figure of Queen Morova, her iridescent carapace gleaming under the light of 3 moons that filtered through the translucent ceiling. Her mandibles clicked in what the translation matrix interpreted as amusement, though the 6 armed guards surrounding Alaric suggested the situation was anything but amusing. So the humans send a single diplomat to negotiate the fate of their mining colonies? Queen Morova's voice resonated through the chamber, a harmonious blend of clicks and subharmonic tones. I expected warships, not words, Alaric maintained, his composure despite the sweat trickling down his back. Humanity's first contact with the Vesperans had gone catastrophically wrong when automated mining drones inadvertently desecrated what turned out to be ancient Vesperan burial sites on Proxima Centauri b. Now the fate of 3 human colonies hung in the balance. Your Majesty, I come representing the United Earth Coalition with full authority to negotiate reparations, Alaric said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. We seek peaceful resolution. The Queen's compound eyes flashed with an unreadable emotion. She rose to her full height, nearly 3 meters of chitinous regality, and descended the crystalline steps toward him. Peace? Your kind strips our sacred lands, disturbs our ancestral spirits, then speaks of peace? Her attendants buzzed in collective outrage. We have traditions older than your civilization for resolving such transgressions. The diplomatic AI in Alaric's earpiece whispered translations and cultural context. Warning, Vesperan royalty traditionally issues challenges of combat to resolve territorial disputes. High probability of ritual challenge imminent. As if on cue, Queen Morova extended one elegant limb, its serrated edge catching the moonlight. I challenge you, human representative, to the Calixvor, the royal duel. Win, and your colonies may remain with appropriate spiritual boundaries established. Lose. Her mandibles clicked softly. And your colonies will be evacuated within 1 lunar cycle. Gasps and clicks echoed through the court. Even with his limited understanding of Vesperan culture, Alaric knew this was unprecedented. Queens rarely engaged in direct combat themselves. His mind raced through options. The neural augmentation provided by Earth intelligence gave him enhanced reflexes and strength, but nothing that would match a Vesperan royal in physical combat. Their exoskeletons could withstand small arms fire. Their natural speed and multiple limbs made them formidable opponents. Then, in a moment of either brilliance or madness, Alaric recalled something from the cultural briefing. Vesperans valued skill and artistry as much as martial prowess. Your Majesty, he said with a formal bow, I respectfully decline your challenge of combat, and instead challenge you to the most sacred human ritual of negotiation and understanding. The Queen's antennae twitched in surprise. And what ritual? Would that be human? Alaric straightened to his full height, meeting her compound gaze directly. A dance, Your Majesty. Where I come from, it's how we've resolved conflicts since ancient times. A test of rhythm, coordination, and connection. If 2 parties can find harmony in movement, they can find harmony in agreement. A ripple of clicking mandibles, the Vesperan, equivalent of murmurs, spread through the court. The Queen's head tilted in what the cultural matrix suggested was bewilderment. You challenge a Vesperan queen to dance? Her voice carried equal parts confusion and intrigue. You understand that if I accept this challenge, and you fail to impress the court, the consequences remain the same? I understand completely, Alaric replied, his hand steady as he activated his diplomatic kit's holographic interface. Shall we begin with music from both our worlds to establish common ground? The Queen's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sound his translator couldn't interpret, but which he instinctively understood was laughter. Whether it was mockery or genuine amusement remained to be seen. Very well, Ambassador Fine, she finally said, her voice carrying throughout the crystal chamber. I accept your unusual challenge. Tomorrow at high moon, we shall dance for the fate of your colonies. She turned to her attendants. Prepare the grand harmonic chamber, and bring our ancestral rhythm keepers. As Alaric was escorted to his quarters, his AI assistant calculated the odds of success at less than 7%. But what the AI couldn't calculate was the wild card Alaric was counting on, that beneath their fearsome appearance and martial culture, the Vesperans were fundamentally artists at heart. His mission now depended on learning to dance with six-limbed royalty before the three moons aligned again. Humanity's future on Proxima Centauri hung on his ability to find rhythm in the most unlikely of partnerships. Alaric's temporary quarters in the Vesperan Hive Palace were surprisingly accommodating, if one could ignore the hexagonal architecture and the slight gravitational difference that made every step feel like a subtle stumble. The room hummed with bioluminescent light that shifted in synchronization with the natural rhythms of the planet's ecosystem. "Ambassador, I've compiled all available information on Vesperan movement patterns," announced Iris, his diplomatic AI, projecting a holographic display of Vesperan physiology. Their six-limb coordination suggests a mathematical approach to rhythm rather than the emotional one typical in human dance traditions. Alaric studied the simulations, watching the elegant, precise movements of Vesperan ceremonial dances. "We need to blend approaches, Iris. Mathematics won't win this challenge alone. We need to demonstrate the emotional resonance of human dance while acknowledging their precision." He activated his neural augmentation, allowing enhanced muscle control and memorization of complex movement patterns. Earth's best xenoanthropologist had studied Vesperan culture for decades, but practical application remained theoretical. Until now, a soft chime announced a visitor. The translucent door dissolved to reveal Lazuli, a younger Vesperan with lighter blue carapace markings who had been assigned as Alaric's cultural liaison. "The Queen sends regrets that she cannot provide instruction before the challenge." Lazuli's mandibles clicked softly as the translation came through Alaric's earpiece. "It would be inappropriate, but I am permitted to answer questions about our movement traditions." Alaric gestured to the holographic projections. "I'm studying your ceremonial patterns, but I need to understand the meaning behind them. In human dance, we tell stories, express emotions." "As do we," Lazuli replied, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic light. The Calyx Vor itself originated as a mating ritual before becoming a challenge of dominance. The Queen's choice to engage you personally is significant. Alaric's eyebrows raised. "Significant how?" "Queens rarely issue personal challenges unless the matter involves colony survival or—" Lazuli's antennae twitched in what the cultural matrix suggested was embarrassment. "Potential genetic compatibility." "Wait." Alaric paused, processing this information. "Are you suggesting—" "I suggest nothing, Ambassador," Lazuli interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. "I merely provide cultural context. Queen Morova has ruled alone for 3 cycles without a consort. Your species' arrival and your unusual response to her challenge has stirred much discussion in court." Alaric ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit the neural augmentation couldn't eliminate. "Iris, adjust our approach. We need to incorporate elements that acknowledge the ritual's origins without implying inappropriate diplomatic intentions." "Working on modifications," Iris replied. "May I suggest incorporating elements from the Terran diplomatic waltz with adaptive parameters to accommodate Vesperan physiology?" While Iris worked, Alaric questioned Lazuli further. "What determines success in this challenge? Is there a formal judging system?" "The judgment is both collective and intuitive," Lazuli explained, moving gracefully around the room in demonstration. "Our species communicates through subtle harmonic vibrations. Dance is an extension of this. We feel resonance with movements that synchronize with our collective rhythms." To demonstrate, Lazuli's 6 limbs began moving in complex patterns, creating subtle vibrations that Alaric could feel through the floor. "Do you sense it, Ambassador? The rhythm beneath the movement." Alaric closed his eyes, letting his augmented senses detect the patterns. They weren't just visual or auditory. There was a tactile, almost subharmonic quality to the performance. "Iris, are you recording these vibration patterns?" he asked quietly. "Affirmative. Analyzing frequency patterns and creating a response algorithm." For the next several hours, Alaric practiced tirelessly, combining the precision of Vesperan movement Mathematics with the emotional expressiveness of human dance. His neural augmentation allowed him to process and adapt quickly, but the fundamental challenge remained: connecting with an alien species through movement in a way that transcended physical differences. As the second moon began its ascent, signaling, approaching night, Lazuli prepared to depart. "One final question," Alaric said. "What happens if we achieve true resonance, beyond just avoiding conflict?" Lazuli's compound eyes seemed to sparkle in the bioluminescent light. In ancient times, when two dancers achieved perfect harmony, it was said they could glimpse each other's ancestral memories, a true connection of understanding beyond language. She moved toward the door, then paused. "Ambassador Fine, regardless of tomorrow's outcome, your challenge has already changed something in our court. For centuries, we've resolved conflicts through displays of dominance. Your approach intrigues us." After Lazuli departed, Alaric continued practicing until his muscles ached, and his neural augmentation warned of fatigue toxin buildup. "Iris, send a secure update to Earth Command," he said, lowering himself onto the strange but comfortable resting platform. "Inform them that tomorrow's challenge may have greater implications than originally anticipated. The cultural exchange itself might prove more valuable than the mining rights we came to protect." As he drifted toward sleep, the subtle vibrations of the Hive Palace hummed around him, his body unconsciously beginning to attune to their rhythm. Tomorrow would test not just his diplomatic skills and augmented abilities, but humanity's fundamental capacity to find common ground in the most alien of circumstances. The Grand Harmonic Chamber lived up to its name. Vast and octagonal, its walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that responded to sound vibrations. The floor, a translucent crystal surface, revealed intricate root systems beneath, pulsing with energy. 3 concentric circles marked the performance area, with the innermost circle glowing a deep cobalt blue. Vesperan nobility lined the chamber's perimeter, their carapaces adorned with symbolic markings denoting their lineage and rank. The atmosphere vibrated with anticipation as subtle harmonic tones emanated from what Alaric recognized as living instruments, plants cultivated to produce specific frequencies when caressed by specialized Vesperan limbs. Ambassador Alaric Fiend stood at the chamber's edge dressed in his diplomatic uniform modified for movement. Hidden within the fabric, microsensors connected to his neural augmentation would help him detect and respond to the subliminal vibrations central to Vesperan communication. Heart rate elevated but within performance parameters, Iris whispered, through his subdermal implant. Pheromone analysis indicates high interest from the assembled Vesperans. Categorize that interest, Alaric muttered quietly. Hostility, curiosity, predominantly anticipatory curiosity with undertones of skepticism. No significant hostility detected. A resonant tone silenced the assembly as Queen Morova entered from the opposite side of the chamber. Alaric's breath caught momentarily. Gone was the intimidating martial presence from their first meeting. The queen had transformed herself into a vision of artistic elegance, her carapace polished to an iridescent sheen, adorned with intricate patterns of luminescent pigment that shifted with her movements. 4 of her 6 limbs wore delicate crystalline extensions that amplified the subtle vibrations she naturally produced. For the first time, Alaric fully appreciated the beauty inherent in Vesperan physiology, not in spite of its alienness, but because of it. Ambassador Fiend, Queen Morova's voice carried through the chamber. You have challenged me to a human ritual of resolution. As is our tradition, the challenger begins the demonstration. Alaric stepped forward onto the outermost circle, feeling the crystal floor respond subtly to his weight. Your Majesty, with respect for both our traditions, I propose a modified approach. Neither human nor Vesperan should begin alone. True harmony requires mutual initiation. A ripple of clicking mandibles, surprise or disapproval he couldn't tell, spread through the assembly, the queen's compound eyes fixed on him, unreadable. Explain your reasoning. The purpose of this challenge is to find common ground between our species, Alaric said, his voice steady. Beginning separately reinforces our differences. Beginning together acknowledges our shared purpose. After a moment that felt eternal, Queen Morova inclined her head slightly. Your perspective has merit. How do you propose we begin this? Shared initiation? Alaric activated his neural augmentation sensory extension. Iris, initiate harmonic resonance program, he whispered. From hidden emitters in his modified uniform, subtle vibrations began emanating, matching the base frequencies of the Vesperan living instruments, but introducing a human element. The mathematical patterns of a Terran waltz transposed to Vesperan sensory ranges. If I may approach the inner circle, Alaric said, extending his hand in the human gesture of invitation, I will demonstrate. The Queen moved forward with fluid grace, her movements creating rippling patterns in the crystal floor. As they both reached the middle circle, Alaric began a slow, deliberate sequence of movements. Not yet dance, but a physical demonstration of respect that incorporated elements from both cultures. His body curved in gestures that echoed Vesperan greeting, ceremonies while maintaining human fluidity. The challenge begins, announced a senior Vesperan official, striking a resonating crystal that sent vibrations through the entire chamber. The living instruments responded, producing complex harmonies that contained both mathematical precision and emotional depth. Alaric felt rather than heard the music. It resonated through his body, guiding his movements as he began the carefully choreographed sequence. Queen Morova observed briefly, her antennae quivering as she processed his movements. Then, with startling grace, she joined him, mirroring his gestures while adding distinctly Vesperan elements. Where Alaric moved with 2 arms, she complemented with 6 limbs. Where he stepped forward, she created counterpoint movements that maintained perfect balance between them. Harmonic resonance detected, Iris reported in his ear. The Queen is adapting to match your pattern while introducing complementary variations. Collective audience response showing increased neural synchronization. What had begun as separate demonstrations rapidly evolved into true duet, human and Vesperan movements blending into something entirely new. The living instruments responded, their tones shifting to accommodate this unprecedented convergence. Alaric felt his neural augmentation working at maximum capacity, helping him perceive and respond to subtleties in the Queen's movements that would have been impossible for an unenhanced human to detect. Yet beyond the technology, something more fundamental was happening, a genuine connection forming through movement. As they progressed to the innermost circle, the cobalt light intensified. Queen Morova extended 4 limbs in a configuration Alaric didn't recognize from his preparation. The audience's collective clicking grew louder. Warning, Iris whispered urgently. The Queen has initiated the Zorlin pattern, a sequence traditionally reserved for potential mates during the final evaluation. Alaric faltered momentarily before his diplomatic training took over. To reject the pattern would be a profound insult. To follow it completely might imply commitments beyond his diplomatic authority. Instead, he found a third path, acknowledging the pattern with a respectful human variation that conveyed understanding without acceptance, appreciation without commitment. The Queen's compound eyes fixed on him with newfound intensity as she recognized his diplomatic navigation of the cultural minefield. Her mandibles clicked once, not in anger but what seemed like approval, as she adjusted her own movements to complement his response. Together they moved to the rhythms that transcended their biological differences, creating a visual and harmonic dialogue that spoke more eloquently than words ever could. When the resonating crystal sounded again, signaling the midpoint of the challenge, they paused in perfect symmetry, the chamber absolutely silent except for the subtle vibrations still passing between them. Ambassador, Queen Morova said quietly, her voice carrying only to him rather than the entire assembly. I begin to understand why your species has survived despite your physical fragility. There is unexpected depth to your approach. Alaric inclined his head respectfully. And I understand why the Vesperans have created such a harmonious civilization, Your Majesty. Your connection to rhythm and resonance gives you strengths we humans are only beginning to comprehend. The second phase of the challenge awaited. The fate of human colonies still hung in the balance, but something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere of the grand harmonic chamber. The dance had become less about dominance and more about discovery, a first step toward genuine understanding between species who had initially met through conflict. The living instruments intensified their harmonics as the second phase began. Rather than the structured patterns of the first half, tradition dictated that this portion would be improvised, a true test of the dancer's ability to communicate without preparation. Queen Morova initiated with a complex sequence that Alaric's neural augmentation barely managed to interpret, a challenge within the challenge. Her 6 limbs created overlapping geometric patterns while her body produced subtle vibrations that resonated through the crystal floor. The queen is accessing ancestral movement patterns, Iris analyzed rapidly. These sequences haven't been recorded in any diplomatic database. Alaric felt sweat beading on his forehead as he worked to respond appropriately. His augmentation provided enhanced capabilities, but the true test was understanding the cultural context behind the movements, the meaning beneath the mathematics. He closed his eyes briefly, letting intuition guide him. Earth's xenoanthropologists had theorized that despite vast biological differences, certain movement archetypes might be universal, patterns that evolved independently across species because they connected to fundamental experiences: birth, growth, conflict, cooperation, death, renewal. Alaric responded with movements that honored the queen's pattern while introducing human variations. Gestures that spoke of Earth's own evolutionary journey from ocean to land, from isolation to community. The audience's clicking intensified as they recognized the narrative emerging between the dancers. The queen's movements became more fluid, adapting to incorporate elements of Alaric's human style while maintaining Vesperan precision. Remarkable synchronization patterns developing, Iris reported. Audience pheromones indicate strong approval. What began as challenge transformed into conversation, a wordless dialogue between species. When Alaric introduced a spinning motion inspired by ancient Terran whirling dances, Queen Morova responded with a spiraling pattern of her own, her limbs creating concentric circles of movement that complemented his rotation. The living instruments responded, producing harmonies neither fully Vesperan nor human, something new emerging from the collaboration. As they moved deeper into the improvisation, something unexpected occurred. The crystal floor beneath them began to glow with increasing intensity, responding to their synchronized movements in ways not recorded in any briefing material. Ambassador. The queen's voice reached him through their connected movement. You are experiencing the Vesperan memory resonance. Few outsiders have achieved sufficient harmony to trigger this phenomenon. The glow intensified, and suddenly, Alaric's perception shifted. Through some combination of the crystal floor's properties and their achieved harmonic state, images began forming in his mind. Not his memories, but hers. He glimpsed ancient Vesperan hive cities, felt the collective consciousness of Queen's past, understood viscerally why the burial grounds were sacred beyond human comprehension. The neural augmentation struggled to process these alien impressions, but Alaric's human consciousness grasped their emotional significance. These weren't just burial grounds the mining drones had disturbed. They were living memory repositories, places where Vesperans could reconnect with their collective past through the same resonance technology he was experiencing now. I see, he whispered, the words carrying deeper meaning than their simplicity suggested. To his astonishment, Queen Morova's next movement sequence suggested she was experiencing something similar. Her patterns incorporated distinctly human elements she couldn't have known without accessing his memories. Your oceans, she said wonderingly as they continued to move in harmony. So vast and open. Your species evolved in such freedom. The exchange deepened as their dance continued. Alaric shared through movement the story of humanity's journey. To the stars, the triumphs and tragedies, the desperate need for resources that drove expansion, but also the wonder and reverence that guided exploration at its best. The Queen responded with the Vesperan history, their evolution as a collective species for whom individual and community were never separate concepts, their development of resonance technology that allowed them to preserve ancestral wisdom in living crystals. As the final crescendo of the living instruments approached, Alaric recognized the opportunity to transform this challenge from a competition into a true resolution. His movements shifted to incorporate both human adaptability and Vesperan precision, creating a pattern that suggested cooperation rather than dominance. Queen Morova recognized his intent immediately. Her response pattern complemented his perfectly, their movements suggesting intertwined futures rather than separate paths. Together they created a final sequence that spoke of two species finding harmony while maintaining their essential natures, unity without uniformity. When the resonating crystal sounded the challenge's conclusion, they stood facing each other, in the innermost circle, the floor beneath them glowing with unprecedented brilliance. Alaric extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. The queen extended her upper right limb in the Vesperan equivalent. The chamber erupted in harmonics as the Vesperan nobility recognized what had occurred. Not merely a successful challenge, but a breakthrough in interspecies communication. Through dance, Ambassador Alaric Fine had achieved what fleets of diplomatic vessels might never have accomplished: genuine understanding. The human colonies may remain, Queen Morova announced formally, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. But with new boundaries and protocols that honor our ancestral connections, the victory was far more significant than simple permission to maintain mining operations. What had begun as crisis diplomacy had evolved into the foundation for meaningful, cultural exchange between humans and Vesperans. As the formal ceremony concluded and the assembled Vesperans began dispersing, Queen Morova spoke quietly to Alaric. "Ambassador, the memory resonance we experienced is considered sacred among my people. It creates a connection that transcends ordinary diplomatic relations." Her compound eyes studied him with newfound respect. "Your challenge has altered the course of our interactions permanently." Alaric bowed respectfully, understanding the profound significance of what had transpired. "On behalf of humanity, I am honored by this connection, Your Majesty. I believe it opens possibilities neither of our species anticipated. What neither of them could have predicted was how quickly those possibilities would need to be explored. For beyond the Vesperan system, forces were gathering that would soon threaten both their civilizations. One planetary rotation after the dance challenge, Alaric found himself not in a diplomatic chamber, but in the Vesperan Strategic Command nucleus, a biometric structure deep beneath the Hive Palace where living technology merged seamlessly with what he recognized as advanced quantum computing systems. Queen Morova stood at the center of a three-dimensional tactical display showing star systems beyond the Proxima Centauri region. Her posture communicated tension even before his translator interpreted her rapid mandible clicks. "The memory resonance we shared revealed more than cultural understanding, Ambassador Fine," she said as he approached. "It created synchronicities in perception that have significant implications." She gestured with two limbs, manipulating the tactical display to focus on a distant sector. 3 cycles ago, our long-range sensory arrays detected anomalous energy signatures from this region. Yesterday, after our dance, I received confirmation from our scientific consensus. These are artificial constructs approaching both our territories. Alaric studied the display, his augmentation interfacing with the Vesperan system to enhance his understanding. "First contact with another species?" "Third contact," the Queen corrected. "Yours was our second. But unlike your accidental intrusion into our territory, these entities have been methodically harvesting star systems in a pattern that suggests deliberate resource extraction on a scale that exceeds both our civilizations combined." A senior Vesperan whom Alaric recognized as Fleet Director Kithex clicked his mandibles urgently. "The Queen's unprecedented acceptance of your challenge and your equally unprecedented success has created a unique opportunity. We have never shared strategic information with outsiders before." "What changed?" Alaric asked, though he suspected the answer. "The memory resonance," Queen Morova replied. "What you experienced of our burial grounds was merely surface understanding. The deeper connection revealed that our species share compatible values despite different expressions of them." Her compound eyes fixed on him. "We perceive similar threats and opportunities, Most importantly, we recognized in your memories that humans, despite your individualistic nature, understand the concept of mutual defense. Director Kethex manipulated the display to show comparative technological capabilities. Separately, our civilizations would likely fall to these approaching entities. The Vesperan collective consciousness provides advantages in coordination, while human adaptive thinking generates innovative tactical approaches. Our consensus-based decision-making sometimes lacks. Alaric processed the implications rapidly. You're proposing a military alliance? My diplomatic authority doesn't extend. Not merely military, the Queen interrupted. A true symbiosis of capabilities. She moved closer, her movements echoing the harmonic patterns they had shared in the dance. The resonance we achieved was not merely cultural, Ambassador. Our scientists believe it indicates biological and technological compatibility that could be leveraged to create defensive systems neither species could develop alone. Director Kethex produced a crystal data node. We have prepared comprehensive intelligence on the approaching entities and our proposed joint response. Your neural augmentation can interface with this directly, allowing you to understand the full scope without translation errors. Alaric hesitated only briefly before accepting the node. His diplomatic training emphasized caution, but the memory resonance had created a foundation of trust that transcended protocol. He inserted the crystal into his augmentation interface. Port-but information flooded his consciousness. Not just data, but contextual understanding enhanced by Vesperan resonance technology. He saw clearly that the approaching entities, a silicon-based collective the Vesperans called the Void Harvesters, systematically stripped planets of resources with no apparent concern for indigenous life. More importantly, he understood the Queen's proposed response. A hybrid defense system combining Vesperan resonance technology with human quantum computing to create a shield that could disrupt the Harvesters' coordination systems. This could work, Alaric said slowly as the implications became clear. But development would require unprecedented cooperation between our species, knowledge and technology sharing beyond anything in Earth Coalition protocols. Which is why we began with dance rather than technical exchange, Queen Morova replied, surprising him with her strategic foresight. The challenge established compatibility at the most fundamental level. What follows is merely implementation of principles already demonstrated. Director Kethex's antennae twitched in what Alaric now recognized as the Vesperan equivalent of emphatic agreement. The human colonies we disputed are positioned at mathematically optimal locations for the defense network. What seemed like territorial conflict was actually the prelude to necessary collaboration. Alaric couldn't help but smile at the cosmic irony. So when your ancestors established burial grounds at those locations, they weren't random choices, the Queen confirmed. Our ancestral queens selected sites based on planetary resonance patterns. The same patterns that make them ideal for both your mining operations and our proposed defense grid. The implications were staggering. Two species who had nearly come to conflict over these locations were now contemplating using them together for mutual preservation. The dance challenge that had seemed like a diplomatic eccentricity had actually established the neural and cultural pathways necessary for this unprecedented cooperation. I need to contact Earth Command, Alaric said, his mind already formulating how to explain this development to his superiors. But I can tell you their likely concern verification. We'll need concrete evidence of these void harvesters. The Queen made a gesture Alaric now recognized as Vesperan acknowledgement. During our resonance, I glimpsed human verification protocols. We anticipated this need. She manipulated the tactical display again, revealing sensor data in formats compatible with human scientific standards. We've prepared evidence packages that will satisfy your most skeptical analysts. As Alaric reviewed the data, he realized the Queen had understood human thinking better than he'd expected. The verification materials were comprehensive, addressing potential objections before they could be raised. The memory resonance had clearly given her insights into human diplomatic and scientific expectations. If what you're showing me is accurate, he said carefully, we have approximately 6 standard months before the harvesters reach our nearest outposts. Development of a joint defense system would need to begin immediately. Which is why, Queen Morova said, her tone carrying unexpected warmth, I am appointing you as permanent liaison to the Vesperan Collective. The resonance we established creates efficiencies in communication that would take others years to develop. Director Kithex added, our scientists have already begun adapting resonance technology to interface with your neural augmentation more completely. With your permission, we can enhance your ability to communicate directly with our collective consciousness, while maintaining your human individuality. Alaric took a deep breath, recognizing both the opportunity and the leap of faith required. Before I agree to physical augmentation, I need to understand the full implications, and my government will require assurances regarding information security and sovereignty. Of course, the Queen replied. We anticipated these concerns as, well, she gestured to Lazuli, who had entered the chamber quietly. Your cultural liaison has been appointed to explain all implications of the proposed enhancements. We ask only that you approach the explanation with the same openness you brought to our dance. As Alaric followed Lazuli to a preparation chamber, where the enhancements would be explained, he reflected on how dramatically circumstances had changed in just 2 planetary rotations. He had arrived expecting tense negotiations over mining rights. Now he stood at the threshold of an unprecedented alliance that could reshape the future of 2 civilizations. The dance that had begun as a diplomatic gambit had transformed into the opening movement of a much larger performance, one in which humanity and Vesperans would need to maintain perfect harmony to survive the approaching storm. 6 months later, Alaric stood at the observation portal of the joint human-Vesperan defense installation Harmonic Aegis, watching as the final resonance amplifiers moved into position. The massive crystalline structures, a fusion of Vesperan living technology and human quantum engineering, formed a geometric pattern spanning the Proxima Centauri system. His enhanced neural augmentation hummed with activity, allowing him to perceive both the technical data streams and the subtle harmonic vibrations that connected the Vesperan crew members. The integration had been challenging but transformative. He remained fully human while gaining the ability to directly experience aspects of Vesperan consciousness. Final calibration sequence initiating, announced Commander Vylara, the Vesperan officer whose carapace markings indicated both military rank and scientific specialization. Resonance alignment at 93% and climbing. Earth Fleet Admiral Novak's holographic presence nodded from the command platform. Human contingent standing by. Quantum field generators at full capacity. What had begun as a desperate alliance had evolved into something far more profound. The defense system they'd created, named Symphony Shield in human documents and Great Harmonic in Vesperan records, represented a true technological symbiosis. Vesperan resonance crystals amplified human quantum field generators, creating a defensive network designed to disrupt the Void Harvester's hive-mind coordination. Queen Morova entered the command center, her regal presence immediately shifting the energy of the space. 6 months of intensive collaboration had transformed her perspective on humans as profoundly as Alaric's understanding of Vesperans had evolved. The ancient burial grounds now serve both their original purpose and a new one, she observed, moving, to stand beside Alaric at the view portal. Our ancestors preserve our past while their resting places help secure our future. The former mining colonies had been respectfully redesigned, now serving as nexus points for the defense grid while honoring their significance to Vesperan culture. Human engineers had worked alongside Vesperan spiritual guides to ensure technological implementations preserved the sacred harmonics of each location. Long-range sensors detecting Harvester Vanguard approaching system boundary, reported the human tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Fan. Estimated contact in 17 minutes. Alaric felt a familiar harmonic vibration, Queen Morova initiating a private resonance channel between them, a communication method that had become their preferred means of exchanging thoughts during critical moments. Are you concerned, Ambassador? Her thoughts resonated directly in his consciousness. About the technology? No, he responded through the same channel. About whether 2 such different species can maintain this level of cooperation beyond an immediate threat? That remains to be seen. The Queen's compound eyes studied him with what he now recognized as affection. When you challenged me to dance instead of combat, I believed you were merely being clever. I did not anticipate that you were showing us a fundamental truth about both our species, which is that harmony requires both structure and improvisation. The Vesperan collective provides the structure. Human individuality offers the improvisation. Together, we create something neither could achieve alone. Their philosophical exchange was interrupted as the tactical display flared with activity. The first wave of void harvesters had entered the system, crystalline constructs that absorbed energy and matter indiscriminately, their alien geometries defying conventional understanding. Symphony shield activation sequence commencing, announced Commander Vylara. Human quantum field generators syncing with Vesperan resonance amplifiers in 3, 2, 1. Alaric felt the activation through his enhanced senses, a cascade of harmonics rippling through space as the defense grid engaged. The crystalline amplifiers glowed with increasing intensity as they projected overlapping fields of quantum resonance energy. The void harvesters entered the defensive perimeter, their crystalline structures pulsing with ominous energy. View screens throughout the command center displayed their approach. Dozens of geometric entities moving with unnatural precision, each larger than the largest Earth battleship. First contact in 5 seconds, Lieutenant Commander Fan announced, her voice steady despite the tension. When the lead harvester encountered the Symphony shield, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The overlapping fields of quantum resonance, energy disrupted its crystalline structure, causing visible fractures along its surface. The entity emitted pulses of energy, attempts to communicate with others of its kind, but the resonance patterns scrambled the transmissions. Shield performing at 107% of projected efficacy, reported Commander Vylara, her mandibles clicking rapidly with what Alaric now recognized as excitement. The harmonic disruption is exceeding theoretical models. Admiral, Novak's hologram leaned forward. They're adapting already. Look at the secondary formation. Indeed, the harvesters behind the first wave were reconfiguring, their structures shifting into new geometric patterns that might resist the shield's effects. This adaptability had been their greatest concern during development, that the alien entities would simply recalibrate to bypass their defenses. Initiate secondary resonance pattern, Queen Morova commanded. Activate the dance protocols. This was the true innovation of their collaborative design. Rather than creating a static defense, they had implemented what humans called adaptive algorithms, and Vesperans termed harmonic evolution, a system that could shift its patterns in response to the harvester's adaptations, much as dancers adjust to each other's movements. Alaric placed his hand on the neural interface panel, connecting more deeply to the system. Through his enhanced perception, he could feel the shield's harmonics adjusting, the resonance patterns flowing like music responding to a changing rhythm. The human quantum engineers had programmed responsive patterns based on Earth's greatest dance traditions. The Vesperan resonance specialists had contributed their ancestral movement mathematics. Together, these patterns created a defensive system that didn't just block the harvesters, but actively countered their every adaptation with a new configuration. They're pulling back, Lieutenant Commander Fan reported with barely contained excitement. Outer perimeter entities are retreating to defensive formation. For 3 intense hours, the dance continued. The harvesters would probe with new configurations, and the Symphony shield would respond with harmonically opposed patterns. Each exchange provided more data, allowing the defense system to learn and anticipate. Finally, after what appeared to be an internal communication exchange, the harvester fleet began a full retreat from the system. The command center erupted in a mixture of human cheers and Vesperan harmonic tones of celebration. Admiral Novak's hologram showed the stoic naval officer actually smiling. First round goes to us, but they'll be back with new strategies. We've bought time, not permanent peace. Time is what we needed, Queen Morova replied. And more importantly, we've demonstrated that our species can truly work as one when necessary. As the celebration continued around them, Alaric and the Queen stepped away to the private council chamber adjacent to the command center. Through their resonance connection, they shared thoughts too complex for verbal expression. The implications of their success extended far beyond this single defensive victory. What began with a dance challenge has led to something neither of our species anticipated, Alaric said aloud, giving voice to their shared understanding. Not just an alliance, but a new form of civilization, one that preserves the best qualities of both our kinds. Queen Morova's compound eyes reflected the stars visible through the chamber's view portal. The Void Harvesters are but the first challenge our combined civilization will face. Beyond this system lie countless unknowns, some perhaps friendly, others hostile. And we'll face them together, Alaric replied, with the harmony we've built between us. He extended his hand in the human gesture of partnership. The Queen extended her upper right limb in the Vesperan equivalent. As they touched, the resonance between them strengthened, sharing visions of possible futures. Colonies where humans and Vesperans lived side by side. Research centers where their combined technologies created innovations neither could have developed alone, and exploration vessels carrying representatives of both species to distant stars. The future that had seemed so threatened mere hours ago now expanded with possibilities. What had begun as a desperate diplomatic gambit, challenging an alien queen to dance instead of combat, had evolved into the foundation for a new chapter in galactic history. The harmony they had found would not just preserve their civilizations, but transform them, creating something greater than either could have become alone. In the cosmic dance of evolution, they had found new steps, together.